Hey guys, welcome back to my Microsoft Flight Simulator series called the American Sports Landscape. Today we are going to cover my home state, the state of Utah. And if you're not familiar with the series, we are using Flight Simulator to go state by state and find every sports venue from Division I college basketball, football, baseball, hockey, soccer, football, everything. So first off, we're going to hit St. George and the DIXIE State Trailblazers. Then we're going to head up to Cedar City to see Southern Utah. And then we'll go up the Wasatch Front to Provo for BYU. Make a short little jaunt over to Orem for the Utah Valley. And then we'll go over the point of the mountain to Sandy for Real Salt Lake, University of Utah in Salt Lake City, the Utah Jazz. And then we'll head north to Ogden for Weber State, and we will end this episode in my hometown of Logan, Utah, for Utah State. Last episode, we ended in St. George after flying through the state of Nevada from Reno down to Las Vegas. So we will start from St. George. St. George, Utah city has grown a whole bunch in the last couple of decades. Used to be a fairly small little condensed town right under the Red Bluff foothills, but now it has spread throughout the entire valley, as you'll be able to see when we get up into the air. St. George, known as Utah's Dixie. I don't know why that name came about. I think it had something to do with the warmer weather in the winters, and being in the south part of Utah, they decided to call it Utah's Dixie, which is why the college here is called Dixie State. They used to be the Dixie State Rebels. They have changed that, obviously because of connotations to the Confederate Army, which was pro-slavery. And so now they are the Dixie State Trailblazers, which is an ode to the Mormon pioneers. They did have a vote, I believe, just recently about the name Dixie State and possibly changing it to Utah Technical, like Utah Tech, but I think that got shot down. So for the time being, they are still the Dixie State Trailblazers. In St. George. So the main part of town is just ahead of us, but you can see it is spread out towards basically all behind us, spread out in that direction to the southeast. So Dixie State plays at Greater Zion Stadium, and once again Flight Simulator has crafted buildings where the bleachers would be, because the bleachers look like a roof, I guess. Same with the bleachers on the baseball stadium. There's a whole bunch of baseball stadium bleachers that have turned into buildings from the AutoGen system that Microsoft has. And then Burns Arena, just above the football stadium, is the basketball arena for Dixie State. Alright, here's the old part of town underneath these red bluffs. Red Rock Bluffs. And we are going to now head north over the hill into Cedar City. We'll get out of the Red Rocks and start to head higher in elevation until we hit the Wasatch Front. And so we'll go from the Red Rocks of southern Utah to the mountainous forested region of northern Utah. Zion National Park is out this way. You can see to the right of us there was Hurricane and Laverkin, and then Zion National Park up above them. I think there's a scene here where I point out Zion National Park. We won't go over and take a really close look at Zion National Park because there's plenty to see in the state of Utah. Some of the states where there's only a couple of teams will find at least, one or two scenic areas to highlight in the state as we make our way across it. But in Utah, there's plenty to see. So there's Zion National Park. off in the distance there. If you ever get a chance to stop by there, do it. I think it is probably one of Utah's busiest, if not the busiest, national parks in the state. Right there with the two that are around Moab, which we won't see, Canyonlands and Arches. They're a little too far out of the way for this trip. So we're going to head up north through the center of Utah. First off, hitting Cedar City, home of the Southern Utah Thunderbirds. If you've followed my channel for a while, you're familiar with Southern Utah. Did a whole series in NCAA Football 14 with them. And that series is not over, by the way. I'm working on another season of it. And we're going to resume it here in the near future. Because we just came too far to let it just end where it ended. So here's the town of Cedar City. Still a little bit of red rock and red clay in Cedar City, but it's starting to get up in elevation. It does snow regularly in the winter in Cedar City, where it does not snow regularly in St. George. It can at times. It can get cold in St. George, but the norm is to be quite a bit warmer than the rest of the state of Utah. So we fly over the town of Cedar City here, heading towards first the basketball arena, the America First Event Center, formerly known as the Centrum. And it's that round building right there. And then ECCLES Coliseum, the football stadium where we played our Southern Utah dynasty, our home field. And we'll continue to play it as part of Conference USA. That series is a promotion relegation series, so if we do happen to win the conference, Conference USA will move up to the Big 12. But we have not done that yet. Haven't even made the conference championship game, and we are heading into season number 8. Will be the upcoming season when we resume that here, hopefully in the very near future. Okay, so we're going to leave Cedar City now. This is going to be our biggest stretch of no venues. From Cedar City all the way up to Provo. There's not any big towns really. A lot of small towns: Milford, Fillmore, Beaver, Nephi. A lot of little towns along the I-15 corridor here. So we speed up this simulation, get you a look at the geography at a little faster pace, and kind of the layout. You can way up there in the distance, you can see the silhouette of the mountains above Provo, way up there, and that is where we are headed. There's a little town right there, either Fillmore or Beaver. I get them mixed up. Which one is north and which one is south. Milford is somewhere in there as well. So we head up the I-15 corridor here. Farmland off to the left, mountains to the right. And as you head to the right, which is east, we're probably about where we would turn over to get to Lake Powell. That might actually be a little bit south of where we're at. All right, so now we've skipped ahead just a little bit. We're starting to come upon the Wasatch Front. A little reservoir to our right. And we are headed, when we see Nephi, we know we're getting close to Provo. The big mountains up in the distance are Provo. The little mountain that you can see in better detail straight ahead is where Nephi is. So we're getting close. The rate of simulation we're at here is like, I think I sped it up to 8 times the speed. So we're moving along here, headed towards Nephi. Pretty soon you'll be able to see Utah Lake come into view. As we hit Utah County, I think you can actually start to see it now. Up there it might be a little bit hazy. It's not the little lake right in front of us. That's not Utah Lake. I think that's a little lake somewhere around Mona. Okay, here's Utah Lake off to the left. And we did pass Nephi, so now we're headed into Utah County. And we've got like Santaquin, a bunch of little towns. But we want to get to Provo, which is straight ahead of us now. We've got to drop a lot of altitude to get down there and see anything in good detail in Provo. So we're at 11,000 feet. Start dropping pretty quickly here. But there's a good look of the mountains above Provo. Brigham Young University. And I'm not going to lie, I don't love BYU at all. Not a lot of love lost there from a Utah State fan. I actually very much dislike all of Utah County. Used to live in the south part of Salt Lake and hated going into Utah County for any reason. But it is beautiful down here, I will give it that. Alright, so we're coming up on Provo right here. Provo, Orem, American Fork, all the way up along the mountains. Provo, the home of the BYU Cougars. So, Microsoft Flight Simulator on some of the smaller cities just used like the AutoGen system from Bing Maps, and where there was buildings, it created buildings. If there was a shape that wasn't like a normal building shape, like the shape of a football stadium, it just left it flat. So unfortunately, like, we would be able to see Lavelle Edwards Stadium right here for sure, because it stands out, it's huge, right? But because it did not render as a three-dimensional image or a three-dimensional building, it's just flat on the ground, so it looks really weird and funky. And some of the, unless it goes like, Flight Simulator really got the elevations correct, like as far as ground level. So if the stadium is built into the ground, you'll see a depression in the ground where the stadium is at. Lavelle Edwards Stadium is all above ground, so the whole thing just looks flat and really weird. So, but we can see where it's at, and just imagine that it's actually quite huge, quite large. Like it would be the biggest building in the scene right now. But you can start to see it come into view. It's that oval, but it's very flat. It looks like it got hit by an asteroid or something and just flattened. We come up on it, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, right off of the BYU logo. Like, it really is quite huge, but this just looks weird. And maybe someday they continue to update Flight Simulator. They continue to have updates. Maybe someday they will eventually get all of the mid-sized cities like Provo. So you can see how flat that looks, like something just mashed it down. But it's really quite huge, and it's all above ground. So yeah, that just looks really weird. It's like the system just didn't know how to build that into a 3D building, so it just left it flat. Alright, we're going to circle around here under the mountains and get a look at BYU's basketball arena.
500.
Right here ahead of us is the Provo Temple. It also did not render that correctly. And there off to the right you see the LDS Missionary Training Center. And then the Marriott Center. Whoops. It's right where the logo is right now. Right where the BYU logo was. That square building right there. And that goes way down into the ground. It's a very huge cavernous building that goes clear down there. So that's the Marriott Center. And there's another look at Lavelle Edwards Stadium as we fly by. Flattened Lavelle Edwards Stadium. And you can see the Y up on the mountain. So a lot of these intermountain states, they have a letter up on the hill. You'll see it when we get to Montana. University of Montana has a big M on the hill. University of Utah has a U. We'll actually go fly right by it. Utah State has an A on the hill, but it is kind of been neglected, and they don't really light it up or paint it much anymore. Alright, Utah Valley in Orem. They do not have a football program. I believe they have a baseball program and a basketball program as far as major men's college sports go. And their arena is right off of I-15 called the UCCU Center. It used to be the McKay Center, but now it's the UCCU Center, and there's the baseball stadium with the bleachers turned into a building again. So right off the right wing is the UCCU Center. That octagon-shaped building right there. Utah Valley University in Orem, right by BYU. Utah Valley actually beat BYU in that building earlier this season in basketball. So now we'll head down I-15 and go over what we call the point of the mountain. It's a terrible place to drive from Salt Lake to Provo. The point of the mountain is always jammed up in traffic. Really bad. But we'll come into the Salt Lake Valley here, and our first stop will be Rio Tinto Stadium, which is the home of Major League Soccer's Real Salt Lake. And Real Salt Lake was just purchased by the owner of the Utah Jazz. It had been up for sale for over a year, I think. So the owner of the Utah Jazz just bought Real Salt Lake, and I think part of that ownership group was Dwayne Wade. He is also part owner of the Utah Jazz. So we come over the hill, there's Draper right below us. Draper's a really nice area. Sandy is pretty nice as well as we drop down into Sandy. Rio Tinto Stadium right off of I-15. You can see I-15 right off of our left wing. It goes up through the Salt Lake Valley into northern Utah. Great Salt Lake is off in the distance. You can see Antelope Island up there as well. Up in the top left corner of your screen, you can see, it's kind of hazy, but you can see the lake and the little island up in it. It's Antelope Island. But here's Real Salt Lake, Sandy, Utah. Maybe 20-25 minute drive depending on traffic south of Salt Lake City. We're gonna swing around here and take a closer look at it. As you can see, now we're on the west side of I-15. We've got to cross back over I-15 to the east side to catch Rio Tinto, the Riot, which will probably be renamed here soon, so they might have to redo the song because the song talks about the Riot, the Rio Tinto. So Rio Tinto Stadium. Used to go to several games when I lived in the Salt Lake Valley. I loved going to Real Salt Lake games. The stadium is a great stadium to watch soccer in. Not a bad seat in the house. And we're going to almost fly right through the middle of it. So we get a good look. Swing around. You can see it says Real Salt Lake on the bleachers. Pretty good detail there. Obviously, Flight Simulator is made to look better from the sky, so the closer you get to the ground, the less detail or the less sharp it looks. But we still get a pretty good idea. Alright, now we're heading up to Salt Lake City. So to the left is the downtown area. We are headed what they call up on the hill at the University of Utah. We're going to check out their basketball arena first, then do football, then we'll head over and see the home of the Utah Jazz. So Salt Lake City, home of the Jazz and the University of Utah Utes. Their basketball arena these days is a ghost town of what it used to be. Their attendance has been terrible this season, and their team has been terrible. That's what they get for taking Utah State's coach. And a couple of players. I wonder if those players are happy that they left Utah State, where they won a Mountain West championship And now they're playing on a Pac-12 team that can't win a game. Feel bad for them. Not really. They made their choice. All right. We are almost to the University of Utah area. So we're going to actually see the Huntsman Center first, the basketball arena. Then we're going to take a little fly by the U on the hill. And then we will hit Rice-Eccles Stadium. All right, the Huntsman Center. It is the dome building that was almost right behind the logo. You'll see it. There it is, the dome building. Right there on the left, there's the Huntsman Center. Home of the University of Utah Runnin' Utes. Made it to the national championship back in 1998. Lost to Kentucky. Keith Van Horn, Andre Miller were part of that team. And boy, Utah basketball has not been overly great since. All right, there's the U up on the hill. There's like Primary Children's Hospital, University of Utah Hospital. Right there as well, back behind us now. I don't know what this building is with the blue dome on top of it. I need to look that up.
500.
But we're going to swing around here and head towards Rice-Eccles Stadium. Home of the Utes. And opening closing ceremonies of the 2002 Winter Olympics that were held in Salt Lake City. I know Salt Lake is bidding for the Olympics again. And probably will get it at some point in the future. Not sure how soon, but I'm sure Utah is due for them again at some point. All right, Rice-Eccles Stadium. Used to be just Rice Stadium until they had major renovations that the Eccles family donated a lot of money to for the Olympics. And became Rice-Eccles Stadium. Okay, now we head downtown. Downtown Salt Lake City. Gonna find the Vivint Smart Home Arena, home of the Utah Jazz. Now down here, I think just to our left is the AAA baseball stadium, but we don't quite see it. But that's okay, we're not doing AAA venues. We've seen a few. We saw one in Sacramento that we pointed out of the WILDCATS. When we do happen across them, I'll try to point them out, or any other things of that nature. Like, yeah, I think when we go over Spokane, over Tacoma, I show you all the Tacoma Dome, which used to be home of the Seattle Sonics at one point before they moved to Key Arena. All right, so here is Vivint Smart Home Arena, the square building right here, formerly known as the Delta Center, also formerly known as Energy Solutions Arena. It is now Vivint Smart Home Arena, the home of the Utah Jazz. Holds 19,911, at least that used to be it. You see the Salt Lake Temple right downtown off the right, the State Capitol building we just zoomed by. And now we're going to start heading north towards Ogden.
500.
So we're going to do Utah all in one continuous flight, which is rare. We've only had a couple other episodes where we've done that.
500.
I think our opening episode in Wyoming, we had one continuous flight. I think the next episode we went through all of Colorado in one consecutive flight. And then after that, I think every other episode has had multiple flights in it. But we're back to one flight here in the state of Utah. I think when I did the actual flight, it took me at least 2.5, maybe 3 hours to do the whole thing. Obviously, I'm just cutting up pieces to show you guys. But it should hopefully feel like you've basically flown throughout the entire state of Utah from north to south. Alright, so we've got a quarry off to the right there. That is obviously there in real life. Off to our left, there's some fuel factories, like Flying J Fuel. Now we head into North Salt Lake. My cousin lives in the North Salt Lake, Bountiful area. Now we're probably about over Bountiful or Farmington. So we head into Ogden, home of the Weber State Wildcats. Damian Lillard played his college ball at Weber State. However, if you ask some Weber State fans, Damian Lillard might not be the most memorable Weber State Wildcat of all time. That might go to Harold the Show Arceneaux. In 1999, Weber State beat North Carolina in the NCAA tournament, and Harold the Show Arceneaux went off for 36 points, hit 9 threes in the upset by the 14-seeded Wildcats over North Carolina. Harold the Show Arceneaux. That would be worth looking up on YouTube, that game, Weber State against North Carolina. They play their basketball at the D Event Center, the Purple Palace, and it is the building, round building right here with the big parking lot around it. And then right quickly after it, we're going to hit STEWART Stadium, which is their football stadium. And it is tucked up against the hill. Their bleachers also turned into a building. On the left side, you can see the right side bleachers are into the hillside, but the left side bleachers, those are supposed to be bleachers right there, not a building. So there's Weber State's football field. They've had a pretty solid FCS program the last few years, the last five years or so. And now we just have one more school to get to, and that is the school in my hometown. So now when somebody mentions the Wasatch Front, you can say, I virtually flew up the entire Wasatch Front from Provo to Logan. So we'll continue to fly up here over Ogden. Get a good look at the mountains above Ogden. They're very beautiful. And we also have some crazy idiot that just comes flying a 747 past us for whatever reason. Thought it would be funny, I guess. There you go. Alright, buddy. Okay. We see you. Thought that would be funny to come buzz a small plane. I could see that. Alright. So, from here to get to Logan, you're going to leave this side, the left side of the Wasatch Front, and hop over to the right side. And so I-15 is off to the left of us. We've gone up into the mountains, and we just hop a little bit over to the east to hit Cache Valley, which we are coming into right now. There's a Mandaway Reservoir up in the mountains to the left. And you can see the Great Salt Lake off in the distance up in the upper left corner. So we are just one mountain range over to the east to hit Cache Valley and Logan. So we're almost done with this episode of my home state. And now this is my home valley. So down below us is Hiram Dam. That's where I used to go water skiing all the time after work. My dad would load up the boat and we would head to Hiram Dam to water ski. My high school, Mountain Crest High School, is right off of the propeller. You can see that building right there and the football field to the right of it. That is Mountain Crest High School, where I went to school. You might even be able to see the MC on the hillside. I'm not sure if we see that or not. There is an MC up on the hillside. I don't know how well it was painted when the map was made, but I'm not seeing it, so maybe we don't see the MC up on the hill. So we're over Hiram, Utah. That's where I went to high school. Down below us, we've got the Blacksmith Fork River that carved that little tiny ravine, and Hollow Road back through there. I've got a cousin that lives on that road back right below us. And then after Hollow Road, this is out of Hiram now, we're in Nibley. Next up we've got Millville, I used to live in Millville for a time. Just lived in a little basement apartment by myself there as a bachelor. And then so Millville is right where our propeller is right there. And then just north of Millville, it all runs together. But just north of Millville is Providence, which is the town I grew up in. In fact, I'll kind of point out the area of the house that I grew up in. There's Providence, Utah, my hometown. And right in that area right there somewhere is where my house was, where I grew up. Had a beautiful view of the Wellsville Mountains over there we'd see every morning. And then just north of Providence is Logan. So Logan, Utah, home of the Utah State Aggies. It's my alma mater. We're going to go fly over the campus. Right up on this hillside is all of the campus of Utah State University. Fly right over Old Main, which does not look like that in real life. It's the same general shape, but the building obviously looks different. And then first off, we're going to take a look at MAVERIK Stadium. Right here to our left. It would be flat, but it is built down in the ground, so we do get some 3D look to it. There is a big huge press box on that above the A on that right side there. So that was MAVERIK Stadium. Home of the defending now Mountain West Conference champions. And now we'll swing out over the north part of town and back around and head straight at the Spectrum. And the Spectrum honestly rendered almost perfectly in Flight Simulator. I mean, it looks pretty much exactly like this. The GLEN Smith Spectrum, right straight at it. Even those windows are there. So there is the GLEN Smith Spectrum. The brick on the outside, though, is kind of orangish on the front where those windows are, not necessarily gray. But the shape of the building is perfect. Alright, well there's the GLEN Smith Spectrum. One of the loudest basketball arenas in the country. There is the Water Research Building below us. And now we're going to skip ahead. We're out in North Logan now. We're going to flip around and land this plane. And we'll call it a day for the state of Utah. As it's kind of starting to get towards evening, so it's like we spent a good portion of the day flying from St. George up to Logan. I'm not sure what time it was when we started this flight, but I would venture to say it was probably somewhere around 2 o'clock maybe. 2 o'clock, 3 hours later, up in Logan, starting to see the sun begin to set. That sounds about right for January. Although you would see snow all over the ground at this time of year, but with the snow on the ground in Flight Simulator, it makes it hard to see the buildings very well. So I just didn't do live weather. If I would have done live weather, there would have been snow on the ground. Maybe when we leave Logan to go to Idaho, we'll do some live weather on our first flight from Logan to Idaho. Let's plan on that. Let's do that. So first flight from Logan to Idaho will be in live weather and in the snow and ice. That'll be the beginning of next episode. So off to the right of the airplane, you can see all that water reflecting. That is a lot of swampy area. Logan has basically got to either grow up the mountainside or towards the north and south, but it can't go to the west very much further because of the water table out in that direction. So we're going to land here on runway 35, heading straight south, almost directly south. Get a nice view of the Wellsvilles in silhouette. Beautiful shot of Cache Valley. Looks so familiar to me. And I don't know why at the airport up here they don't have any of the buildings. It's just a landing runway, just a runway. Other airports, they have buildings. I don't know why, for whatever reason, they don't have buildings at Logan Airport. I don't get it. Do not understand that one. But outside of that, everything looks totally real. Look like this could really be Cache Valley. Except the buildings for the airport have just disappeared. They would be off to the right of the airport. All the buildings and hangars and the air traffic control tower. I think there's 2 of them. I actually proposed to my wife in one of them that my uncle owned. She said yes. That's why we're married now. So if I remember right, this wasn't my best landing in the world. I was too busy gawking at the scenery, I think, and not paying attention to putting this plane down. So we're coming in a little bit high. That's what the white lights are for. 2 white lights and 2 red lights mean you're coming in perfectly. So now we're getting there. There now, if we can maintain this glide slope, which we don't, now we're coming in too low. Now we're perfect. 2 white lights, 2 red lights. You can see the windsock there is pretty much dead. No wind to speak of. I just suck at landing. I've got to get better at like just letting my plane glide down and not like I hover above the runway. Alright. I guess it wasn't too terrible. It could have been better, but I've had worse. The one in St. George was probably a lot worse. Alright, we're in Logan. And that is Utah, my home state, on the American sports landscape. It's Mama's Basement, Sports Gaming.